it. We know what sorts of foods, etc., might be able to help protect us, and again, improve us in terms of thriving in this deep space environment.
Yeah, that's great. Jake, do you have anything to add on that too? Because I know there's many different perspectives when we're looking at radiation.
Yeah, I think Sharmila said it right. It's a reality that's part of the environment, right? And just like here on Earth, we have different types of weather on different days. And so maybe some days the weather is not as great for what you want to do, and you kind of plan around it. And that's what we're doing now is we're planning how to do these space missions in the future. And so as we learn about what normal conditions are like, as we learn what maybe non-normal conditions are like, we can understand what the spectrum of that space weather looks like so that we can prepare for it. I used to do a lot of field work here on Earth. I used to study volcanoes, and we used to say, it's not that there's bad weather, there's just bad preparation. And so that's what we do now is we prepare. We learn by flying spacecraft like the Orion, by flying the CubeSats. They're all teaching us about that environment that we have to prepare for so that when our astronaut friends go to the moon, we know as much as we can about it. But, exploration by definition is kind of going into the unexplored. So we will always learn as we go, and then we adapt to that and we plan for the next time we get a shot at it.
Yeah, totally. So even though there weren't any humans on Artemis 1, there were a few special passengers that will help pave the way for future missions. Let's take a look and learn more about these passengers.
Inside the Orion spacecraft, as we fly around the moon, we have some cool experiments going on to help us understand what the environment is like.
Although there's no humans aboard Artemis 1, we do have a few special passengers aboard that will help us pave the way for future Artemis missions.
So there's basically 3 occupants riding. You can kind of think about it like 3 astronauts. We have a moonican. We will also have 2 torsos that are learning about the moon and learning about the environment for our astronauts before they go.
We have a mannequin on Artemis 1. We call him our moonican for short.
That moonican is called Commander Moonican Campos.
The name is actually in homage to Arturo Campos,
who was an important person who helped bring the Apollo 13 capsule home. The moonican will sit in the commander's seat, and it will wear a suit just like our astronauts will wear.
Moonican Campos is actually weighted to simulate an actual human aboard the Orion spacecraft.
So it will help us understand what our astronauts will experience as they go to the moon and home.
The Orion Crew Survival System suit and the Orion seat were designed simultaneously to fit together as a seamless package. The actual design of the suit was built into the Orion seat such that when they're in the seat, it is a true cocoon of protection for them. During this test flight, the seat will actually be instrumented with accelerometers.
Sensors that tell us how much the chair is shaking during launch and re-entry and how many G-forces or gravitational forces it experiences.
We expect Commander Moonican Campos to have a very exciting ride on his way to orbit. The thrill of launch, the experience of weightlessness, the excitement of landing. What we learn on Artemis 1 with our mannequins assistants will help us better understand how a human will actually behave in the seat, both for landing and for launch to allow us to ensure their safety.
In addition to the moonican, we'll have 2 seats that have basically what's like a human dummy, an upper torso that are detecting how much radiation they're experiencing.
It's called the Matryoshka Astrorad Radiation Experiment, MARE. MARE is an international collaboration with German Aerospace Center, DLR, and with Israel Space Agency. The MARE experiment consists of 2 anthropomorphic phantoms called Helga and Zohar that are simulating a female body in a space radiation environment.
One of those will be wearing a safety vest,
the Astrorad radiation vest,
that we hope will help protect our astronauts from radiation.
Each one of the 2 phantoms will be equipped with about 20 battery-operated radiation instruments.
So between the 2, we'll be able to determine how well we can protect our astronauts from radiation events.
Space radiation is a mix of high-energy, heavy-charged particles that originate from the sun. To put things in perspective, 1 year of Earth exposure to cosmic rays is equivalent with 1 day of space radiation exposure in deep space. The purpose of the MARA experiment is to learn more about the radiation exposure as well as the biological effects of different organs.
So basically, it's like we have 3 occupants inside Orion that are learning about the moon and learning about the environment for our astronauts before they go.
Going back to the moon with new exploration goals and new technologies will help us gain better understanding of the challenges we encounter with deep space exploration.
We will have to develop new technology and solutions to meet really difficult challenges. But that's what NASA does. That's what Artemis is all about.
All right, so Jake, Sharmila, this is my favorite part of any NASA Science Live. We're about to answer the questions that people have been sending in. They want to know so much about Artemis, so these are some good questions. And I know many of you online have questions, so if you want to use the hashtag Artemis on social media or drop a comment in the box wherever you're watching today, we will get those questions and try to answer as many as we can. So the first one I'm going to send to you, Jake. Shavin Yenkits 1 on Twitter asks, how will the outcome of the mannequin tests influence what changes are made for the next Artemis mission?
Yeah, that's what it's all about, right? They're out there to help us learn about the environment that our astronauts will travel through. So as we learn about, for instance, what Helga and Zohar have to tell us, they're going to tell us about radiation and whether or not some of the materials that we designed the Astrorad suit out of can help kind of minimize the amount of radiation that they're exposed to. So that will probably influence maybe how we design safety blankets or suits or something that they can wear so that if they're in a situation where they need to protect themselves, they have something to use. It could eventually influence how we design the outside of spacecraft. All of these types of lessons can help us learn about the next technological step we need to take. So it's all important for us. And Commander Campos, he's teaching us a little bit about how the seat designs will work to kind of minimize just how much they're being shaken during their travel. So that helps us understand the interior design of the spacecraft and how the suits are designed to interact with the spacecraft itself. So together, they just kind of help make the ride a little smoother. And also just kind of help us make sure we've got them outfitted with the right gear to safely conduct the missions we'll ask our astronauts to do in the future.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of the science that went up on Artemis 1 is just having those dummies and all of the collection of that. What are people going to experience when they're in this rocket? It is the most powerful rocket we have. So I find that so fascinating. So let's see. Sharmila, maybe you can take this one. And if I send you a question and you think the other person should answer it, feel free to toss it around. I think we're pretty informal here on NASA Science Live. So at Lugalia and Dega on Twitter asks, will the capsule be reused?
Actually, I am going to hand that over to Jake. I think that's a good question for Jake.
Yeah, so the capsules are designed to be able to be reused. It's one thing that we're doing with the new systems is trying to be able to reuse them. And if it's not the entire capsule, as we continue to develop things in the future, we certainly will learn from each one and develop new systems based off the knowledge that we gain from them. But the intent is for us to be able to reuse those spacecraft when we go forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. Yes. So Sharmila, I do think that you can tell us more about this one. So Connor on Twitter asks, when can we expect to see all of the data and the science that's stored on the spacecraft and the science? And what kind of data can we expect to see?
Yeah, great question, Connor. Thanks for that. So, it'll depend, as I mentioned, for the science that's come back on Orion, there are 4 different experiments. So there's different analysis that's going to be done on each of those 4 different organisms. Typically, though, the analysis for most studies take about a year from when you get the samples back. Also, don't forget that we have to do a ground control that matches the exact conditions that the spaceflight samples went through. And so usually we do that after return of the flight samples because we have all kinds of sensors and detectors inside the experiment package, which measures, temperature, humidity, radiation levels. There's other changes that are being measured. And so you want to recreate as best as you can, at least the temperature, humidity, gas composition, these sorts of things. And so those will be recreated in the ground control. And then the ground control and the space flight samples will both be analyzed and compared to each other so that we can tell what the changes are. So to give you a brief example, for the seeds, the